Good morning and welcome in. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel.
You are a vital part of our game.
Thank you for having me on.
All the way to the green. It was, whoo, boy, was that fun.
I've always wanted to be on 5 Clubs. Thanks, Gary.
Good morning. Welcome into 5 Clubs on a Wednesday, live on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio Channel 92. That is SiriusXM. I'm Gary Williams. This program every day, it is presented by Sentry Insurance. They are very much invested in the game of golf. The First Tee, the United States Golf Association, the PGA Tour, and right here, we appreciate what they do for golf. We certainly appreciate what they do for us. They can do a lot for you when it comes to business insurance needs. It is what they do. They want to be right by you at Sentry Insurance. The show before the show could have been a very good first segment. And let me just note before we give you the tee sheet, yesterday, 4:21, because I looked at my phone at the time, I was walking my dogs and I felt a breeze. It was about 2.5 miles an hour. My gosh, I felt like Andy Dufresne coming through 500 yards of excrement. A 2.5 mile breeze in August in Charlotte. Oh my gosh, fall is upon us. All right, we get to your tee sheet on a Wednesday. Standings and scenarios. It's what these 3 events are all about. And even though there's been a lot of carping about volatility or the absence of it, understandably, we've got scenarios. They're not that provocative. It's going to take, you know, the Heath Slocums, which he did. That was the first playoff event when they used to have 4, and they used to have 125 that were in the playoffs. But we do have the scenarios and the standings for you. BMW starts tomorrow. Mirror, mirror. When I start to give you the details of these 2 players, it's uncanny. It's unimaginable. All the way down to the birth date. We will do that. Sean Zak, Golf Magazine, golf.com. He has been on top, just like Josh Carpenter from the Sports Business Journal, Bob Herrick. There have been a lot of people who've done some very good reporting on a lot of the clumsy details of what is the conclusion of the LIV season. And is it going to be the conclusion of LIV as we know it? Certainly it is, all the way down to the purse this week, shrinking significantly. Yes, shrinkage. So Sean Zak will be with us. Keith Stewart from Read the Line, the overlord himself. Get his thoughts on a golf course and trying to find matches for a golf course that they don't see much. There are some players who are in the field this week who were in the field at the 2018 PGA. Again, different setup. Yardage is different this week, but we'll talk to Keith. We got dogs always on a Wednesday. The hounds get released. We also have picks. A lot of upheaval on the leaderboard for our standings as we get to the bitter end, and we will have our picks for the BMW Championship as well. We go back to the top of that board, standings and scenarios, because a lot of players last week pointed out, particularly after it was over in Memphis, how important 50 is. It is, because they know, all 50 of them, that they know their schedule when it comes to the Signature Series events, and that will be the final year for that in 2027, and then building schedules around it and understanding that's important. You know, this week is a lot to do with cash, and also there are trappings that come with just simply getting to East Lake as it relates to a major championship exemption as well. So as we look at these players, it's worthwhile not only pointing out some scenarios of what they need to do to make their way to East Lake and that Tour Championship, but also, you know, just also giving them some shine for seasons that have been very impressive. Some that we're just getting to know. J.J. Spaun is a major champion. Him sitting there at 21, he's going to East Lake. Victor Hovland got that playoff win against Scottie Scheffler at the Travelers. Alex Smalley, he had his big week in terms of his kind of his own coming out there at Aronimink at the PGA Championship. Justin Rose, we know that he's usually hovering around that number. Ryan Fox, again, the major champion at the Open Championship. Tom Kim resuscitating a young career by having a blazing summer. Adam Scott, maybe a little bit more on him momentarily. So those are the guys 21 to 30. And for Ricky Fowler, it ain't going to take much for him to make it to East Lake. Somewhere in the neighborhood of a solo 50th. There's 50 players playing. As long as he's alone there, he's going to move on. This is where it gets not particularly dicey. For example, Gary Woodland, 31st, won in Houston. He needs a solo 48th. And then we can go, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but for instance, Aaron Rai, who sits there at 37th, then you need a little bit more production. Aaron Rai needs a solo 12th to make his way to the Tour Championship. So that is 1 through 40. Sungjae Im, the mover last week by virtue of his performance in Memphis. He's sitting there at 40th. He needs a top 10. He needs a solo 8th. Then you get down to the guys at 41 to 50, and now we're talking about some Hail Mary stuff. We're talking about whether it is Steve Burkowski throwing a Big Ben to Alfred Jenkins at Fulton County Stadium. Aaron Rodgers is very good at the Hail Mary. For instance, Michael Brennan. If Michael Brennan gets to Eastlake, it means that he finished at worst in a two-way tie for second. And if Michael Brennan does that, Michael Brennan, I think, advances the conversation of him being maybe the wild card last man called when it comes to the United States President's Cup team. That's why when we talked about Jackson Koivin, and if he made it to Eastlake, then it's understandable that he would be in that conversation, because last week he started at 70th and he needed a great finish and then would have needed another one. And Michael Brennan finds himself in that. And then Matt McCarty needs a solo second to make his way to Eastlake. One other guy to point out, Ryo Hisatsune, who I do believe is going to be on that International President's Cup team. He needs a three-way tie for second. So all the guys 45 to 50 need a second in some form or fashion, whether it's three-way, two-way, or solo seconds. So those are the Hail Mary guys, and those are the scenarios. Now, you saw two names among those players that we listed from 21 to 50 who have a very good chance to go back to Eastlake. And it's worth pointing out that these two players, the uncanny, affirmed and Aladar nature of their careers is downright remarkable. Both of these guys have won a major championship. One has one more PGA Tour win than the other at 14 to 13. One has one more runner-up than the other, and then the thirds are close. The top fives are very close. They are within two of each other in top tens, 120 to 118th. And then when you're talking about guys who are close to 80 million just in PGA Tour earnings alone, what's 5 million between friends? Really good friends. When people ask me about these two players, I say they're the same guy for a lot of reasons. Those are the reasons. Adam Scott and Justin Rose. It's remarkable, from their professionalism to the kind of regal way that they carry themselves to their height. And let me give you some more granular aspects of how these two guys, who, by the way, their first seasons on the PGA Tour, one being from Australia, one being from England, both of these guys, it was 2003 that they had their first season on the PGA Tour where it was kind of like a full season. Both of them had double-digit starts. So they start the meter simultaneously, and here they sit. And let me just add more to this. Adam Scott was born on July 16th of 1980. Justin Rose came into the world 2 weeks later, July 30th of 1980. And it wasn't on that day that they knew that they were going to grow up and be guys who were going to have elite professional golf careers. But on top of all that, consider this. Adam Scott's first professional win was at the Dunhill Championship in 2001. You know who was second by one shot? Justin Rose. You know who got his first professional win the following year at the same event? Justin Rose. They both have 11 European Tour wins. They both have 2 FedEx Cup playoff wins. They both have 2 World Golf Championship wins. I've never seen 2 players, and I haven't done these deep dives, whether it's looking at Hogan and Snead, and yes, 9 to 7, you can start right there as far as the win total. Adam Scott and Justin Rose at 46, the old men in a game that is all about kids now, still doing it and with very good chances to be at East Lake. And they should, and likely will, but more importantly, should go into the World Golf Hall of Fame together whenever that day comes, because they are the same guy. Mirror, mirror. All right, we take our first break. Sean Zak going to join me, get his thoughts on this clumsy end to the LIV season, season number 5. It doesn't mean, as I pointed out yesterday, some of the people, many members of the PGA Tour who have benefited greatly financially from the existence and the presence of LIV in the professional golf world. Brian Rolapp probably wouldn't be the commissioner of the PGA Tour if LIV never happened. And I can go on, and Luke Donald as well. But Sean Zak on the details of this final event that wasn't supposed to be the final event. They shuttered the final event and did that clumsily as well. So we'll get his thoughts. Keith Stewart a little bit later on. We got picks, standings, dogs, lots of upheaval with the standings. Gil Hance asking immediately after Scottie Scheffler won, what are the standings? Would you build another great golf hole, please? Just focus on your job. Nice to have you with us live on a Wednesday. It is Golf Channel. It's PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on SiriusXM. Back right after this. Back in live on a Wednesday here on Golf Channel and also PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on SiriusXM. Love to get his thoughts on anything, because I know, bring him on, don't even have to ask him or tell him what we're going to talk about, and he can go. If we talk to him in about 4 weeks' time, he'll have his Jordan Love jersey on, maybe a Brewers cap. He is, of course, senior writer, Golf Magazine, golf.com, author of Searching in St. Andrews, and that hotel room he's staying in is so personally appointed. My gosh. Good morning, Sean Zak.
Good morning. Rise and shine here from Indianapolis.
Yes, and it's like, well, what's an Indy? Well, the end of LIV 2026, and it's the end of LIV as we know it, because whatever it might be next year will not be what it currently is, and what it currently is less and less, it seems like, with every event. So let's start there as we wake up, players not getting paid, team sums from team earnings from a couple of events ago, not seeing checks yet from the New Jersey event. I never thought, Sean, that these players were not going to not play, but tell me about that part of it. Let's just start there with the accounting.
Well, it's getting trickier and trickier for LIV, because you're seeing vendors from January not get paid, vendors from May who helped with the TV broadcast not get paid. Those vendors are now filing lawsuits against LIV Golf. So, the tournament's going on this week. It's going to happen. They're still going to give a lot of money out, and they're still going to have a ton of people at the golf course. But the walls financially seem to kind of be caving in. And frankly, a lot of these signs, if you ask a financial professor, say this league is moving towards bankruptcy. Now, that's a big, scary B word. And a lot of times businesses can bounce back from that. But it is a sign of weirdness. It is a sign of direness, and it feels like it's moving in that direction.
Now, you mentioned these lawsuits from vendors not being paid for months at a time, who services rendered to LIV. It's beyond just the players, though, as far as, people who work for LIV, staff. What about that? I mean, I got to think, Sean, that morale, it's got to be as bad as it's been, considering, how grand it seemed when this thing was launched.
Yeah, that's a very fair point, because it launched in the grandest way possible. I was there in 2022 when LIV had all the money in the world, and they were spending it, and they were showing it. It was gaudy. It was showy. That was this golf league. Now, I still think, those people who work for LIV are still doing their jobs as they know it, the jobs that they signed up for. I don't think that their morale is necessarily shown to dip, but this is the last week of the season, and it feels like, okay, we got to get through this week. and then we can reset publicly. What they've been doing publicly over the last week has been a bit deceptive towards fans. Like, LIV Golf still has a lot of people that will show up because Indianapolis loves its golf. So a lot of them were thinking of showing up for a concert this coming weekend. Those concerts will not happen because LIV didn't have enough money to fund the concerts and wasn't coming forth with information that, hey, these concerts are canceled days ahead of time. It just feels, to your word that you used in the break, it does feel clumsy. And it doesn't always have to be, because it hasn't always been for this league.
The big thread, like when you look back and you go, what happened that made the tapestry fray and dissolve altogether? We know that the funding from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, that is the big thread that made all of this stuff start to fray in every direction. But I want you to go back for yourself, your own timeline. You go back a year ago last March, and there was conversation being had between, the principals at LIV / the Public Investment Fund and the principals from the PGA Tour and the most important players. What do you think? Was there a moment, was there a series of moments that made that get separation that then, whether it was just the dominoes started to fall? What was there a moment? And if there was, what was it?
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people have, Gary. And I think if I would pinpoint it, I think it happened at the White House, and I think it happened between Yasir and Jay Monahan. And like you said, Tiger Woods, who was leading the charge for the PGA Tour, like, what had to happen was a valuation of what LIV Golf's assets were. If LIV Golf was going to be brought to the table, and if there was going to be a hypothetical merger, there needed to be a valuation. I've talked to people, to players at LIV Golf. They, of course, valued it very high. The PGA Tour valued it considerably less, and they could not meet in the middle. The moment that you're talking about would be the moment that a piece of paper gets pushed across the table, figuratively, to Yasir. He opens it up and says, and sees a number that he doesn't like to see. So, like, the moment is truly, this is what we think your assets are worth. And Yasir Al-Rumayyan, a man who deals with millions, billions, and trillions, decided that he did not like what he saw, that he really loved team golf, that he wanted to change the game, and he wanted to profit off of all this stuff. He was dismayed by that number, and he just moved on. That's kind of the moment.
So when you look at that, like you mentioned, I agree with you, the tension in that Oval Office meeting, which it looked like there was all this momentum, and from what I understand from a very good source, there was a tense moment between Yasir Al-Rumayyan and Jay Monahan where it's like, where is this coming from? And all of a sudden it's like the meeting breaks up and they go their separate ways, and there was never any détente, there was never any resolution, there was never any cleansing. And then the PGA Tour kind of did this stalling out. So now let's get to the assets, and let's start with Jon Rahm. Give me what you think is the most likely path ahead for him based on all of it, the financials, the personality, a level of stubbornness, all of it. Tell me what you think is likely. In January of 2027, what does his road look like?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I almost feel like that will be the month in which we find out, because Jon has a contract that extends beyond 2026. Like, he is in a different situation than a lot of LIV golfers, Bryson DeChambeau included. So his contract extends further into the future. He has told us publicly he doesn't think he can get out of his contract. Something would have to change between both sides of that contract that has been signed. Now, are things changing, right? Will LIV file for bankruptcy? Will they struggle to pay players? Will they have to renegotiate that contract? Suddenly, Jon Rahm may not love that contract, may not want to play, alongside that contract anymore. That's when things get a little bit weird, a little bit tricky. But that is what probably creaks the door slightly open for him to have multiple options. The important point is that until then, people think that Jon Rahm could be having backdoor conversations and taking meetings with Brian Rolap. we started this entire thing, this entire golf civil war with this term tortious interference, which is to interfere with contracts between other parties. Like, the PGA Tour cannot be legally trying to woo Jon Rahm while he has a contract with LIV Golf. So it really is in his camp. It's really up to him to decide, okay, I got to fulfill some of my obligations with LIV. I need to go back to the table with LIV and then decide what I want. Now, you asked me what is most likely. If I'm being a rational, reasonable person, there's a lot of bad looks happening at the golf tour that Jon Rahm plays on right now. They need some good looks to bring him back in, I think. Look, I really haven't talked to Jon. I haven't talked to his camp. So this is just rational thinking. I would say it's most likely that he has to entertain renegotiating that contract, looking at if it makes sense for him, maybe playing a season on the DP World Tour, and then moving back to traditional golf. But like I said, I don't know, and I don't think his team's going to comment on it. He's going to play a number of events in Europe this fall. Maybe we'll find out more then, but I feel like January 2027 might be when we find this whole thing out.
Yeah, and I do know that he was out on Long Island. Why wouldn't you be on Long Island in the summertime, take a little downtime? I also know that he did get together with people who have real, ties to the PGA Tour. And that can mean nothing more than, trying to get viewpoints and perspective from them on, hey, give me some advice. I mean, look, we all need people in our life that give us a perspective on things that we can't certainly have on our own because we are looking at it the way that we look at it. As far as Bryson goes, I feel almost definitively that he will be the P.T. Barnum of whatever big top is created around him. Am I wrong about that? I mean, whether it's some, rebranding of LIV, if it's LIV, if it's something else, if it's some hybrid YouTube globetrotting, isn't that what it's going to be?
I think that he is as committed to this thing as he's probably ever been. I think he's probably sees the alternative as less attractive than maybe your traditional golfers. I think Bryson is also kind of going through a bit of a moment where he doesn't really trust golf media at large. Does he have reasons for that are legit? You could probably see both sides, but he wants to be a part of this thing. He's working with the investor. He is trying to carve up ideas to make this thing work. I talked to Bryson in March, and at that point, he is in South Africa, obsessed with his life, loving life, talking about how he wants to be the one to reunite the tours. He had talked to the YouTube CEO, Neil Mohan, about what would this whole thing be worth if the players could own it and LIV could own it and the tour could own it all at the same time. Like, you might find some joke in it, but he has punched in a lot of this information to various large language AI models trying to come up with the right answer to mend this war. And I don't know if it's working out for him, but it doesn't feel like he's going to be racing back to the PGA Tour anytime soon, especially if they're not carving out some special path for him.
Yeah, there's no AI apparatus that can understand completely the bad taste that a lot of people, the PGA Tour has, for him, whether it be membership, his name being attached to litigation. You can do all of that stuff. That's borderline delusional to me, that he will somehow be, some grand deal maker to bring it all together. I go back to what I think it's going to be. He's got a big audience. He's got big appeal from a wide swath of demographics. I feel like it's going to be globetrotting. And Sean, look, we saw it, him being with Gary Player. He's going to go to South Africa. He's a show. And undeniably, he's a show. And I think that's what, the foreseeable future is going to be. There are other very good players. And this is where I get to the DP World Tour. The DP World Tour, to me, is a very solid winner with all of this, because that is a landing spot for so many of these players born outside of the United States, where the resolution of fines so that they have places to play. And it's going to start almost immediately. Look, we found out today that Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter, you can say they can't win. They're names. They're going to play in the Alfred Dunhill Championship, right after the President's Cup week. The DP World Tour, to me, Sean, wins here.
Yeah, they have a schedule too that they have worked around the greater PGA Tour schedule, which is, late January to late August. The DP World Tour has a great fall, a really, really good fall. They play into November. They have a really good beginning of January too. If you want to add in Australia in December, which will now partner with the PGA Tour, it took them a while, but they got into a good spot where there is a calendar that works for them. It works for the players who are mostly American-based to find pockets where they can go abroad. I mean, Patrick Reed is living proof of that. But I think you will see more players and potentially LIV players maybe get an invite to the Irish Open, definitely play in Australia, certainly play in Dubai at the end of the year. If anything, the DP World Tour is this odd little bridge by which people can walk back towards maybe the lives that they lived as golfers 5-6 years ago. And that's a victory for that tour. A tour which was not always doing so well. At times, it's still financially not doing all that well. But they made some very, very savvy decisions. Keith Pelly, even though he's a past CEO at this point, he once met with the Saudis in a very, very real way, thinking about taking investment from the PIF, but instead signed a strategic alliance, moved in the direction of the PGA Tour, and here we are 5 or 6 years later. It's working out for that tour.
It is, and you can add one other thread that was pulled, which was around the Open Championship, was the Asian Tour, DP World Tour, PGA Tour, which was, kind of like a haymaker. As LIV is kind of staggering back to the corner. That was a big blow as well. And you mentioned Patrick Reed. Look, we'll do it, you and I, but others will as well, because he will be the firewall between Rory and another Varden Trophy and a DP World Tour title. And give it to me around Thanksgiving as they go to the Middle East to reside. I mean, come on. I mean, it's a found storyline by way of LIV through the DP World Tour for Patrick Reed. Last thing for you is, as Scheffler boat races everybody in Memphis, can you try to contextualize this 5 years for him? Because the Tiger thing, it's the only thing we can do. We try to explain to people we're not making a direct comparison, but the accomplishments and the production is the only thing comparable. Contextualize the Scheffler 5-year run.
I think people, in order to understand it best, need to think about how it's gotten better every single year. And now this year, you could say it hasn't gotten better somehow, but it's still really, really high. Go back to his first win in Phoenix 2022, and Scottie beats Patrick Cantlay in a playoff. And it's this new Scheffler kid, he must be pretty good. Goes on and wins the Masters that year, 4 putts on the 18th hole. It felt like he was learning how to just get it over the line. Now he wins by 8. You look 2 years ago, he wins a ton, and he's winning by a lot. Last year, he wins the CJ Cup by 8. This man has gotten a little bit better even when we thought he was at his peak, basically every year. And this year is this weird golf sicko proof of I can win my first event. I can take a bunch of second place finishes. You can see my frustration, but I'm still the best in the world. I'm still going to win the FedEx Cup. I'm going to win one of the playoffs events, and I'm going to do it by 8. And you guys are going to see this release from me of I've been here. Do not forget who I am, and don't forget that I win tournaments by 8. Gary, my main question for you is that you might have led the show today if any other golfer on the planet won their tournament, particularly a tour event, by 8 strokes. But because it was Scottie Scheffler, it was oh yeah, Scottie won again. But if Rory wins by 8, if Jordan Spieth or Justin Thomas or any named golfer wins by 8, we're talking about it all week. But because it was Scottie, it was almost yeah, he did it again. Good job. And it's just that acceptance is kind of blows me away.
Yeah, and to the point about Rory, he's now got a gap between himself and Rory that is as wide as Rory and any other player that has any ranking in the system, period. We're talking about thousands of players. That's happened a handful of times. Again, primarily it's Tiger that's created this gulf between him and second, and the end of whoever is in the system, wherever they might get a point, somewhere in Kazakhstan or Zimbabwe. That's what he's done. All right, listen, have a great week in Indy. Excellent work on the hotel room, making it very personal and warm just for you. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Sounds good, Gary. We'll see you.
All right, there is Sean Zak, senior writer, Golf Magazine, authored a wonderful book about his own life and experiences searching in St. Andrews. Those were winning words, presented by Sentry Insurance. When we continue, the overlord of Read the Line, trying to understand how to play players other than Scheffler at a golf course most of these players are unfamiliar with. Plus, we got dogs and picks as well. Great to have you with us here on a Wednesday, live on Golf Channel and PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on SiriusXM. Back after this. All right, we're back in here live on a Wednesday, Golf Channel, PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on SiriusXM. He has helped us out, give us a viewpoint when it comes to understanding the golf course as it relates to the field and what will be rewarded. And he, of course, is from Read the Line. He is Keith Stewart, and you can get his stuff not only every day, but like around the clock. He never leaves all those various screens that he's looking at to update information. Nice Florida Gator colors, nice little ode to your son. How you doing?
You know, Gary, I'm doing better than, I guess maybe Sam Burns on Sunday. I could say that much. Now, hey, a quick point. I really loved your opening in talking about the parallels between Justin Rose and Adam Scott. And although they don't have this in common, I thought it was very unique this week that Rosie didn't play here at Bellerive in the BMW in 2008 for whatever reason. Maybe he didn't qualify, but Adam Scott is the only guy in the top 50 that played both the 2008 and the 2018 PGA. Pretty cool stuff. I really did like that. Their careers are so cool the way they parallel one another.
It's spooky. Truly, truly spooky in every way. Let's start with Bellerive. You mentioned 08, Camila Villegas won the playoff event there more recently. As much as we remember Brooks Koepka winning, it was Tiger not hitting a fairway, but managing to shoot 64 and keeping the heat on the whole time. A golf course that you know, the club founded in 1897. It was known as the Field Club. They changed the name in 1910. This golf course is the third location, opened Memorial Day of 1960. Give people an idea of what this golf course presents the players.
Well, this is a big ballpark, and this has kind of become the DNA of the BMW Championship. When you think the last couple of years of Castle Pines, Olympia Fields, Caves Valley, Bellerive fits right in there. And when Reese Jones came in, and he's done a number of restorations, renovations to this place, it's now a par 70. And uniquely enough, Gary, for the fourth week in a row, we're seeing a par 70 scorecard. And if you go back to the PGA Championship, it's like 10 of the last 14 weeks. I guess if they want to curtail scoring on the PGA Tour, they have to take away a couple par fives, and that's what you're going to see this week. You're going to see big, beefy par fours. You're going to see a lot of greenside bunkers, and you're going to see kind of very unique green complexes that are really kind of quadranted or sectioned off. You know, very, very Reese Jones, Open Doctor-like, Torrey Pines South. And, you know, if you're not really familiar with Bellerive in 2018, you know, some of the great comp courses, one or two I've already mentioned is Olympia Fields and Caves Valley. But don't forget about across the river over there at Valhalla. We were just there a couple years ago for a PGA. Zoysia Fairways, very, very similar style of golf course. That's what I'm kind of looking at this week as we start to pick players. Yeah,
you mentioned Zoysia Fairways. Fescue and Kentucky Bluegrass Rough, T1 bent grass greens. The green sizes on average are 8,000 square feet. That's robust. I mean, those are pretty big greens. So knowing those things, the agronomic kind of makeup, and then size of greens, 72 bunkers you mentioned. Look, it's 7,448 yards, par 70. We'll save Scheffler here for a little bit of a treatment here in a moment. Is there anything, with all that being said, that stands out among players that maybe we don't talk about a great deal that are in this field?
Well, you know what? You always love to throw the Overlord name out with me,
Yes.
but I spoke to the PGA professional godfather out there in St. Louis, Jay Delsing, a good friend of yours and mine, and he gave me all the course conditions. And I think what is really important is, as we speak right now, it is raining out there. It's going to be soft. You have bent grass in an area that's almost equally as warm as it was last week in Memphis. It has to stay wet. I mean, these greens, they may sound big, but they're going to be very sectioned off. There's going to be an opportunity this week. Whoever leads the field in total driving with soft fairways is going to hit a ton of them. They're going to be wider than TPC Southwind, and there aren't as many penalty areas. If you have great proximity on approach over 175 yards, then you're definitely on my radar as well. You've got to hit the right quadrant of each of these greens. And then, a little bit of short game, a little bit of stylings around the green would be very important because, Mr. Jones loves his bunkers. He loves to make them deep and big, and you're going to have to get up and down every once in a while. Although I will say this much, with the ground conditions being soft, Vegas set the over-under, Gary, at 18.5 under par. I think that's a little bit aggressive, and I would definitely go, that the score will be lower than that. But quite frankly, they think there'll be some scoring, and we know who's going to do. We know who's going to do some of that scoring, and that's Mr. Scheffler.
Yeah, for sure. Give people an idea. Vegas is saying, there's going to be about 261 total, with it being a par 70, 280, obviously total at level par. These players that I'm going to ask you about are having great years, but they haven't just not won this year. They haven't won in a while. And let's start with Sam Burns. Tremendous year, breaking out, being right there at the bitter end of a couple major championships. He hadn't won a golf tournament on the PGA Tour in almost 1,250 days. Give me a thought about Sam Burns this week off of the disappointing Sunday last week.
Well, the bad news is that his trend is almost becoming a habit. We've seen it now on Father's Day this year. We've seen it at Royal Birkdale. Then, of course, we saw it last Sunday. The good news, I would say, for Sam Burns is that he could start to identify what his issue is. I mean, I think back to Birkdale, those 3 quick bogeys that he had on the front 9. He definitely felt and looked like on the TV screen that he was out of his element. And we saw a little bit of that again last week at TPC Southwind. I think that he could go home and he could start to look in the mirror and go, hey, I can get past all of this. Maybe I can't beat the number 1 player in the world who happens to be my best friend, but I can win again. I can do this. I've done this before. And I'm actually he's a far better player than he was 1,200 days ago, Gary. And if anything helps, it's going to be hot again. And we know Sam Burns likes to win when it's hot.
Yeah, to his credit, kind of like Scheffler doing all that he's done to become statistically one of the best putters on the PGA Tour, Sam Burns' iron play is exponentially better than it was 2, 3, 4 seasons ago. Siwoo Kim, here's another guy. The best season he's ever had in terms of really contending, 11 top 10s. He's over 1,300 days removed from winning for the last time. How about him this week off another very good performance last week?
Well, I think this is kind of a sign of the times, Gary. You think about when Siwoo was winning and he burst onto the scene. He would go 4 missed cuts, T50, a T25, and then he would win by 3. And now all of a sudden we see Siwoo. He's been in multiple final groups this year. He has a number of top 10s. He's having a career year, and he's far more consistent. And, a year ago, if I said to you, hey, Siwoo Kim is going to make his game more consistent, you would have just laughed at me. But the fact of the matter is that Burns, Siwoo, all of these guys, they are evolving in their golf game. They're becoming better overall. They're becoming more consistent. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that the kind of the tour is set up. These guys don't want to fall out of the top 50. They see what the carrot is, or they see who the North Star is, and that's Scottie, and they just have to get better. If the golf gods have any heart whatsoever, next week when we get to the Tour Championship, maybe Scottie finishes 3rd, and we get Sam and Siwoo in a playoff for the tour, for the $10 million. Because those guys deserve a win more than anyone on tour. You could say Hideki is hot right now, and he's been hot since the Travelers. But those 2 guys right there have had really, really strong years, and they deserve an opportunity to kind of fight this week and then take it into next week when it is the top 30. And then, man, Bermuda Grass and Burns, Siwoo at that place, straight as an arrow, keeping it in the fairways at East Lake. I mean, those are great options for the next 2 weeks for sure.
They are. You mentioned Scheffler, and I've given him 100 different nicknames. He reminds me of that creature in Legend. That when you feel the oxygen in the atmosphere, he comes out of the shadows. He is the shadow. He's the toll booth collector. He is the Grim Reaper. Just his performance in these playoff events. If you look at what he's done, it doesn't matter where he goes. He either wins or you feel his hot breath on the back of your neck as you cross the line. Here are his last 5 FedEx Cup playoff events. He's won 3 of them, and he lives inside the top 5. It could be Chaska, Minnesota, Blaine, Minnesota, Memphis, Tennessee, doesn't matter. How do you explain how it doesn't matter field size, field strength, agronomics, temperatures? It just doesn't matter, Keith.
I mean, Gary, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts every single week. I mean, he just doesn't make mistakes. He is the Iceman. I know you love your pop culture references. He does it. He just wears you down. It really is fun to watch. I mean, if you really love the game of golf, you have to marvel at the fact that if you think about this week, what do you need to do well on a par 70 golf course? You need to destroy the par 4s. Well, he's number 1 on the PGA Tour in par 4 scoring, and he's number 1 on the tour in par 4 birdie or better percentage. He's number 1 on scoring average. He's number 1 in beard growth. I mean, he's number 1 in everything. It's amazing. And the bad news is that the PGA Tour is making a big deal about this being the 20th anniversary of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Well, in the first 19 editions, we have seen 12 multiple winners in different playoff runs. And we're set up for that again. This is DJ in 2020 all over again, where he went win second, loses the Rahm in that playoff, and then he wins again. I mean, it's almost disrespectful to try to come up with superlatives at this point. Honestly, the one thing that I love about him the most, and the only thing that I will put him in for as far as the Tiger category goes, is that this guy shows up every single week. And even when he missed the cut in Scotland, you could tell it really bothered him. That's what we're looking for. And I'm not going to throw shade on anybody else, but not everybody showed up to Memphis ready to roll. Ryan Fox had been obviously on holiday enjoying his Open Championship. Other people are, in the DJ booth at Ibiza. I get all of that, and they should. Let some air out of the balloon. This guy, you just have to admire, the work ethic. And one of the most interesting stories he ever tells, if you can get him to tell it, is him playing with Tiger in the Masters in a final round, and they were both, paired together.
Yep.
And on the first hole, he talks about how Tiger was locked in, and he's like, man, we're not winning this thing today. This is like a fight for a tie for 20th. And that really made a big impression on him. And I tell you what, it is really, really cool to watch him do this. I mean, folks, if you're in the field, you better be able to beat Scheffler this week at the BMW.
No doubt. All right, so here we go. Update the standings while Gil Hanse is rebuilding the back 9 at Seminole and reimagining Spanish Bay in the summer. He's having the summer of his life making picks. He gets the winning moves ahead of Brendan on down the board. A lot of Schefflers last week. So finally, because you can't beat him, and you've avoided him all year, you finally picked Scheffler. So did Gil. Again, the max for anybody to pick any player over the course of the season is 5. Gil and Brendan DeYoung both can pick him again next week. Jay Billis has done something unprecedented. He is tapped out on Sam Burns, Rory McIlroy, and Scottie Scheffler. I go with Siwoo Kim, Taylor Pickens-Andrews, he posting up top 10s week in and week out. So those are the picks. Keith, thank you as always, my friend. Have a great rest of the week.
Gary, I appreciate it. And you know what? $13.6 million still left on the table, and I have 2 Scotties. I'm coming for you, boys.
So does Gil, and so does Brendan. So good luck with that math. All right, that is Keith Stewart, the overlord of Read the Line. Quick break, come back. Dogs next. It is time, yes, Dogs of the Week. You got a dog you share the game with? Send us the pics and videos, dogs@fiveclubsgolf.com. Here we go. Release the hounds on a Wednesday. First up is Willie. That is Kevin McGawey's dog, a 9-year-old miniature schnauzer at the Pinehurst Country Club, hanging out on the 13th tee at Pinehurst number 6. Next up is Sven. That is Sean Marsalis' dog, a 6-year-old golden retriever at the Watami Golf and Country Club in Rhode Island, where his role is to scare away the Canadian geese. Most important role at any golf course. That is Arnie, Sean Norberg's dog, a Shepadoodle at the Prospector Golf Course at Suncadia Resort in Glen Ellum, Washington. And then finally, Timber. Timber, that is Taylor Cosburn's dog, a 2-year-old Corgi at the Windance Golf Club in Ontario, Canada. Thank you all for sending in those photos of those little creatures we love so much. Those are your dogs of the week. One final note about Bellerive. For people who used to watch the Masters, we're lucky enough, I don't know now that we say we're lucky, but we watched the Masters in the 80s. Hord Harden, remember the former chairman at Augusta National Golf Club? He presided over that Butler National ceremony for many, many years. He won the club championship at Bellerive Country Club 11 times. 11 times. He could golf his ball. For all of us here at 5 Clubs and Signature Sports Group, have a great rest of your week. We'll see you Monday, folks.